Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Conway, Marketing Director at Demand Chain. On behalf of our entire team, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Salesforce CPQ, Unlock Your Business Potential. Our host for today's session is Andy Boettcher. He's our Chief Technology Officer and has been with us for over a decade. In addition, he's a Salesforce MVP, one of only about 250 in the world. And most importantly, he has extensive CPQ experience. Andy will be providing an overview of CPQ and key considerations for successful implementations. Later in the session, he'll be joined by a Demand Chain client, Wade Girton, from Clearscape Outdoor Services, and two Demand Chain team members who will share their experience and insights from a recent CPQ project. We'll then wrap up with a Q&A session. Before diving in, a couple of housekeeping notes. First, all attendees are in listen-only mode. We've reserved time at the end to answer your questions you may want to pose to Wade, Andy, or our team members. If you do have a question, please submit it via the questions panel located on the right of your screen. We'll collect them and ask them later in the session. Second, we will be recording today's session and we'll email you a link to the recording later today in case you'd like to revisit it or share it. And with that, let's dive in. Andy, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And thank you to all of our attendees today for attending our webinar on unlocking the potential of your business through CPQ. Before we get to the main content, I'd like to just take a moment and talk about our company, Demand Chain, specifically about the depth of our experience and our focus on customer success. In our 20-year history, we've completed over 1,200 projects across more than 350 clients. We always strive to not only take our collective experiences seriously, but we back that up with becoming certified by Salesforce in what we deliver. Two of our CPQ certified team members will be speaking to you today. We have always had a very tight focus on ensuring the quality of our work and achieving the successful outcomes of that work. Over the last 18 months, we've really put our money where our mouth is, investing in your success with our formalized customer success program. Leading the charge with a team of over 180 certifications, decades of CRM and CPQ experience, and a formal program to measure and ensure that you're seeing the right outcomes is how we can bring webinars like this to you. For this webinar today, I'm going to speak with you first on talking about what actually CPQ is, where it's commonly and uncommonly used in an organization, signs your organization is ready for a discussion about CPQ, questions you should be asking yourself, and what a good CPQ partner will be asking you. And then, as Jim mentioned, we're going to hear from two of our experienced experts and one of our very honored customers, Wade Girton from Clearscape. As Jim also mentioned earlier, please ask your questions directly in the Q&A section of the GoToWebinar, and we'll be answering those at the tail end of this webinar. So, you've heard about CPQ, the acronym. Really, what does that mean? CPQ is the tool, but predictability, accuracy, and speed are the real goals that you're trying to solve for in your business. Are you looking to ensure consistent and accurate quoting of products, services, or really anything else to your customers, no matter who or what in your company is doing it? Do you have stress converting orders to the actual fulfillment process? Looking holistically, you need to attack these asks like anything else, looking at people, product, and process. CPQ is traditionally looked at as a sales tool, but really, it's a tool that is leveraged across the entire organization. Your inside and channel sales, marketing, service and field service, product, and even into use cases like traditional widget sales, direct and indirect subscriptions, professional and contract services, upsells, renewals, really any persona or situation where you need to be predictably, accurately, and quickly offering your customer something. There are three main areas that help you focus on a successful CPQ solution: product, rules, and execution. Crawl, walk, run. That's how I look at that. Just like when you're working on any problem during your normal day-to-day, you don't want to jump into one area before you're ready. You want the foundations of your prior work supporting and promoting your progress forward. We take that same foundational approach when we're talking to our customers about CPQ. We start with your product taxonomy, ensuring that you're using a clear set of products. For those customers with complicated product structures, ensuring you're using a clear set of straightforward, sales-centric products and codes is imperative to simplifying the quoting process and getting your users to adopt the end solution. For those customers that are tying quotes and orders directly back to ERP, we'll work with you to create that integration and align your product and pricing masters together. Once those products are set, we walk to the rules of those products, creating product bundles, defining configuration options, building your discount hierarchies, approval processes, and ensuring that complementary or conflicting products properly indicate and prompt for action to the individual creating the quote. Finally, we can take those products and rules together and start running with execution, creating quotes with multiple options, creating a professional and informative document that is delivered, converting those quotes you're making to orders or even service contracts, handling renewals, even sometimes swapping legacy products on those renewals, and managing subscriptions are just a few ways we can help you understand impacts to your pipeline or your monthly or annual recurring revenue. Customers are getting more sophisticated, we all know that, and you're getting challenged to interact with them in new and innovative ways. We start on the left-hand side here with a traditional use case of CPQ configured to interact with your inside sales team. As we move to the right hand of this slide, we have the more complex setup, which more businesses are realizing they need to start moving to in order to engage customers who are hitting you across multiple channels as they want to engage. As your business grows into different channels, we start to see the power of CPQ, bringing solid consistency and speed to such areas as your channel partners managing their own book of business in the Salesforce Experience Cloud, your partners and customers quoting and executing orders directly in Salesforce B2B Commerce, proactively improving product information and feedback through a product information management solution such as Salsify, even pivoting your service organization to streamline RMA, warranty, and service contract renewals, and enabling your field service team to quote upsells, replacements, and warranty work while interacting live with your customers. So how do you know that you're ready to start a conversation? Every business has skeletons in the closet. Personally, from my camp, I worked with a very large multinational business that had technical platforms that some companies would just be incredibly jealous of, all powered by a maxed out Excel sheet that managed their global product catalog and pricing, run by one individual who was months away from retirement, and you just found out they hit the limit, max number limit on the number of VLOOKUPs in a spreadsheet, right? Everyone has skeletons. How often do you hear stories like that, or you hear minor complaints that like sales rep X sent out a slightly different quote than sales rep Y, and while your customer isn't too irritated, actually they're elated, but you just lost out on 2% of your margin for that deal, not because because of an outdated discount rule that no longer applies, wasn't stopped before that quote went out the door. Another one we frequently see is a breakdown of what we sold versus what we delivered. The quote may have sales codes that aren't properly mapped to your product catalog, or a format ERP needs to do fulfillment. Or have you seen that sometimes you may have different Microsoft Word or Excel templates saved in different personal drives across your team, triggering corrections in ERP or fulfillment, and perhaps even making a conversation have to happen with your customer where they need to redefine what they ordered because they wanted a widget in an orange color and in a month, but your supply chain limited you to a 2-month lead time. Once you're ready for the conversation, you need to start asking yourself some good hard questions. One of the most common things we see is that a business is sold on the acronym, but not truly clear in their intentions or outcomes. Now, this is an interesting thing to say, but CPQ is not the answer for everything. But it is a solid answer if you're trying to align your pricing approaches across all of your sales channels and honestly have some organizational support to break a few processes. I like to say crack a few eggs to make an omelet to come out in a better place. Another big area of focus in a traditional manufacturing client is alignment with your ERP. Product master, pricing master, customer account master. We commonly see a well-architected CPQ implementation. We don't really see any issue with it. But one of the major complaints that we find out after digging in, something like the reps are struggling to find the right version of a customer from ERP that they should book that quote or order to. They're dealing with tax certificate issues, build to, ship to choices, large company hierarchies. All of these type of things not properly accounted for upfront can derail the most streamlined by the book implementation. We actually had a project recently where we successfully completed a sales and channel focused CPQ alignment. Launched a great fanfare and the channels saw increased velocity of quotes going out the door. They had easier conversations with their customers due to the transparency afforded by CPQ, and they saw lessened requests for help from the channel because they were able to self-help. So fast forward here, service leadership shared in that launch celebration. The guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, Andy, I didn't say this earlier, but we actually have a service renewal process, our service contracts. It's completely manual now. We run it on Excel. We had internally bracketed that to raise an additional 30% revenues just by automating those opportunities to be created and proactively flagging our service teams, our sales teams, and honestly, even our channel reps that are working with the customers in the field, that opportunity was created rather than waiting reactively for an expiration event, a call for help from the customer to find out that their contract's expired or someone to run a report, right? Questions like that, pulling that stuff up out front helps increase your ROI on these type of implementations. Once you talk internally and connect with a partner to accelerate you through the process, there will be some questions that we'll come back to you on. Individual user experience is king. How do you want your sales reps, channel partners, customers, accountants or ERP fulfillment staff to feel? What kind of data integrations, checkpoints, and even look and feel to documents do you want to really come out with here? This is an incredible chance for your organization to move the needle. Just trying to put and I'm using air quotes, how we've always done things in a new system is ripe for disappointment, really on both sides of your balance sheet. Similarly, we're also going through an incredibly opportune time to look inward and see what other future plans your organization has. There may be some minor twists and turns we can account for now that will make those future plans far easier to implement. And heck, we might even be able to pull some of them forward. CPQ can open up conversations you didn't even remotely think of when you started the discussion. One of the biggest things I want you to walk away with is that we really don't have to do everything at once too. Start by identifying one of the largest error-prone or training-focused sales cycles. Focus there. You don't need the entire team to necessarily do everything on day one. If it makes sense, totally. But this point alone, trying to boil the ocean and pull everything in at once, sees more projects descope and honestly disappoint in some cases because eyes can sometimes be bigger than your change management team can support. So last slide before the main event, I promise. One thing I need to stress to you calls back to slide 6 when I talked about what CPQ is. That some companies get sold on the acronym, but not really what it does for the business. Even more so, what your company will need to do to have a successful implementation. Partners like Demand Chain can help accelerate you to an end game, but it takes two to tango with this. CPQ can be a little sticky. CPQ can be seen as boiling the ocean, but it doesn't have to be. Crawl, walk, run. A successful implementation does take some very focused attention, challenging the way you've always done business and looking to the future. CPQ is not a magic wand. It's close. No, I'm just kidding. Two of the most common things we walk into when recovering or refocusing an existing CPQ implementation really are overly rigid pricing rules and somebody tried to make CPQ function the same way as a previous process. Asking your sales and service personnel, so for example, to quote the BOM level of products instead of the sales codes, while it can streamline order entry to ERP, it can cause an incredible amount of maintenance, training, slowed cycle time, and really just honestly more errors and missed expectations when quoting. Being a little tongue-in-cheek for a minute, if your previous process worked, you probably wouldn't have needed to implement CPQ. Trying to do a like-for-like implementation consistently leads to missed expectations, unrealistic outcomes, and a misaligned future state. All right, I told you that was the last slide before we got to the main event. It's my honor today to introduce Chris Mollett and Robin Lindeman, two of our senior Salesforce consultants here at Demand Chain. Also, it's my pleasure to reintroduce Wayne Gerton, CEO and owner of Clearscape. Chris and Robin, before you jump into our website chat here with Wade, would you like to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves and our honored guest?
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Mollett. I am a business analyst here at Demand Chain. I've been in kind of the Salesforce ecosystem, if you will, for 12 plus years with over 4 years here at Demand Chain.
And I'm Robin Lindeman. I'm a senior Salesforce consultant with Demand Chain. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years, and I also have over a dozen years of experience working with Salesforce.
Thanks, Robin. And of course, I'd like to formally introduce one of our clients that we've done a CPQ implementation for, and he's been gracious enough to join us today and have a little chat, and that is Wade Gerton, CEO and owner of Clearscape. Wade, great to have you today. Thank you for coming and joining us. How are you today?
Sure. Good. Thanks, Chris.
Great. We'll come back to this a little bit later, but if you look outside your window, you'll notice that it's snowing, and that means something to Wade. And we'll come around, circle around, back around and talk about that, Wade, and how CPQ is a part of that. Anyway, Wade, would you just take some time here and tell us a little bit about yourself and really a little bit about Clearscape and what that company is about?
Sure. So I spent about 20 years in the software industry and building and marketing different software in different industry verticals. I started a few small software companies myself, sold those, and worked for really large companies. In fact, my last kind of software gig, I was running a customer experience software division. We had probably 1,500 to 2,000 customers that were running software similar to CPQ and Salesforce for their CRM solution. So I'm a little bit comfortable with the space. At a number of those different software companies, we rolled out Salesforce for our CRM solutions. So I knew it at least fairly well. About 3 years ago, I left the tech world and I bought a landscaping company, which seems crazy because I didn't even mow my own lawn at the time. And now I do, which is even weirder. And so I bought a landscaping company with about 100 people or so, 100 employees that service businesses. So most of our accounts are commercial properties, apartment buildings, and townhome associations in the Twin Cities, the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. We have about 100 or so employees, and initially I actually bought the company thinking it would be a nice break from technology and sort of a kind of half retirement thing, and I thought I'd go do some projects on the side. But then after digging in and really starting to understand the business, I found it really exciting and a lot of really fun problems to solve. And of course, I seem to find a whole bunch of interesting problems that we could solve with technology. And so that's kind of the background on me. And so Clearscape, like I said, it's about 100 employees or so. We probably have 400 or so customers. In the Twin Cities area, we do landscaping work in the summer. So, designing and implementing landscape designs, planting trees, retaining walls, that sort of stuff. In the summer, we also do irrigation systems, installing them, maintaining them, and we also take care of lawns, mowing, pruning, chemical treatments, fertilizer, weed control, all that kind of stuff. And then all winter, starting pretty heavily today, looking outside at the snow coming down, we take care of snow removal. So we do plowing and shoveling at, again, commercial properties.
Great. And what led you to consider CPQ, Wade?
Sorry, I didn't answer that. So the more that I got to know this business, the more I saw an opportunity to roll out a new technology platform for the business. And like a lot of other companies in the landscaping industry, this company was a bit of a laggard when it comes to technology adoption. And I think that's definitely true for most of the firms that I've met over the last few years. We're kind of on an acquisition spree, buying other companies like Clearscape, and almost all of them are pretty slow to adopt technology. So we saw an opportunity to kind of become the technology leader in the category. And one of the first things we needed to do was roll out a new platform that would support our sales team, support the customer experience, and all of our employees in the field, making sure that we're capturing the right requirements from customers, pricing those the right way from an accuracy of a bidding point of view, and then passing those details of exactly what needs to happen at which property every week or every other week or every time it snows, down to the crew leads that go out and service those properties. Sometimes in the middle of the night when it snows, sometimes every week for mowing, sometimes on the weekends if there's an irrigation leak. Those are the kinds of things that those crews needed to be empowered and enabled and given the information they needed, but in a way that they could understand it. Because if you can imagine, in a landscaping company, we're lucky if our crew member speaks English, let alone is computer savvy, right? So it had to be super simple.
Great, yeah, because you have a high turnover rate, so it may not be the same crew that might service that same property next time. So it needed to be able to go across and be able to be flexible across everyone. Wade, I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about, how you came to Demand Chain, because let's be honest, we're not the only shop in town, but tell us how you came to us and what that process was like working with us.
Yeah, so the honest answer is we actually started with another company, a competitor of Demand Chains that was in Colorado. We first engaged with those guys with a reference from Salesforce. We tried to implement a product called Field Service Lightning, which turned out to be way too complicated from Salesforce to make work for our business. And so I basically failed on that project and canceled it, and went back to Salesforce and asked them, who would you recommend that would be local in the Twin Cities area? I also asked around to some friends in town. Of course, I know a lot of people in the technology industry and asked them who's the best player in town, and got introduced to Demand Chain that way. So I decided to partner with you guys for two reasons. One, people that I respect had held you in high regard and gave me really good references on your people. And two, you guys, when we first met, were obviously experts in the field and definitely thought outside the box when we looked at how we're going to solve some of the problems that we had.
Great, thanks. So when you engaged with us, we did kind of a stepped approach or a phased approach. We had a proof of concept phase, then the actual CPQ and scheduling implementation. And we kind of paused for a period of learning between, both you, your team and us. And then we moved on to implement the full solution. How do you think that approach benefited Clearscape?
Definitely helps to start with something small that you could launch as fast as you can. What we were trying to do is get to market with something that would add value right away. So in the summer months, we have about 7 months out of the calendar year, where the sales team they'll work 80 hours a week selling landscaping. work. So as soon as the ground thaws, all the way up until when the ground freezes, we are absolutely full speed ahead, right? Trying to make hay as much as we can in the sun, right? So, so that we decided that enabling the sales team first to support landscaping bids, which are very complicated. You know, there might be 20 to 40 different pieces of material that could go into a big project. So we thought CPQ and using bundles within CPQ would help us get out of the gates really quickly and add a lot of value fast. So that was an effort that we rolled out first that would enable the reps and the landscapers, the landscape crews that would go out and do the work, and to make sure that they have the details of exactly what was sold, what needs to happen where, and all the details instructions that kind of go hand in hand with those landscape designs. So it worked out really well to start fairly small. That was probably a pretty big piece of work that we bit off to begin with. But as soon as we were able to get the kinks worked out with that first phase, then we rolled it out to other crews and other divisions. The irrigation crew, I think, went next. Then we did, grounds maintenance, all the mowing and the pruning, and the fertilizer crews rolled it out, and now we're rolling it out to the snow division now. Oh, we did a few weeks ago anyway.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but it may seem like a small detail to some folks in this web chat, but one of the first things that we rolled out was bundling, and I think it was fabric stakes or stakes to hold down the fabric. And one of the first times that somebody submitted it, they had forgot to include it, but CPQ was smart enough, and we built it that it should always include a bundle of those. And so we were all kind of high-fiving each other. Hey, we remembered the stakes. And so, see if you can do something. Yeah, see if you can do something to that small of detail. I think that was pretty cool. All right, Wade, let's talk about what's going on. And if you're looking out your window, you see snow. And as Wade said, snow is part of your business. And so why don't you tell us what a snow event is and what that means to you, and how are you using the solution that we have implemented?
Yeah, so there are a number of field service management packages on the market that you could license to run and schedule crews to go do work at a particular site at a particular time. But there really wasn't anything on the market that was built for snow removal. And snow removal feels a little bit more like a fire department, right? So when there's a fire, the bells ring, people come down the what is that called? The pole, the fireman's pole, right? They hop in their trucks and they take off to put the fire out. When it snows for us, when we hit a certain amount of snow that falls, a set number of accounts need to be serviced, and the more it snows, the more properties want to be serviced, because some properties, will tell us, look, don't come out unless we get 4 inches of snow, or I want you out here right away at a half an inch or a trace of snow because I'm a hospital, right? And I can't have people slipping on their way into ER. So as soon as that snow gets forecasted, we start rallying around the storm, and we start to plan ahead of what we're going to do and who's going to do it. So what we built together was a pretty sophisticated custom solution to support snow removal. Before the planning process to kind of get an event scheduled was hours and hours of work. So if you've got hundreds of properties with dozens of different snow depth triggers that need to be plowed by one crew, shoveled by another crew, salted by a third crew, visited by another quality inspection kind of person, checked out by snow scouts ahead of time to make sure there's not, that there's enough snow on the ground to service. There's a lot that goes into it. And we've actually literally, like this event that happened today, we've got crews out right now. It took 2 people about 8 minutes to set up the event and hit a button and get it scheduled on everyone's phones. So, and the people that are doing the work, we have about 80% of the work is done internally, and then 20% of it is outsourced to subcontractors. And they're all enabled on the system as well. And so it's going really, really well. It took a lot of the pain out for managers to get things scheduled, and in our industry, happy managers is a pretty important thing of for retention and keeping people. So so I think we're in really good shape.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add something here. It's not that CPQ itself is doing the scheduling, but if you want to think about it, we implemented CPQ, and it's kind of a handshake to another process, to the scheduling process. So with CPQ, when you sell a contract and it includes snow events, whether it be a 1-inch trigger, a 2-inch, 3, 4, 6-inch, whatever it is, we're able then to create contract line items or subscriptions, right? We can use either one. And then what we're able to then do is say, show me all the accounts that have a 2-inch trigger subscription. And then we're able to use that. We're able to use CPQ then to use it into another process, our scheduling process, which then throws it onto a very nice calendar app. And then all you have to do is click and slide to create your routes in 8 minutes. That's awesome.
It's really cool. So you mentioned a little bit, Wade, about your staff out in the field and working on their phones. Can you talk a little bit about how important the mobile strategy was for your implementation?
Sure. Yeah. If you think about it, for our company, 99% of our people are in the field, right? They're out doing work, literally any field, right? Field of grass or a parking lot covered in snow. And they needed to be able to get to this information in a really easy to understand, simple way on their phones, right? On their mobile phones. So we were able to do that. And then to have the managers who, once the snow starts, are no longer stuck here in the office looking at their laptops. They're now in the field with their phones, and they're able to check in on and see what the status is of an event, and without having to come into the office. Thank you.
That's great. You've talked a lot about your project managers and when they're out selling, whether it be landscaping or lawn care or snow removal. How is the CPQ help them remember key information, maybe do some upselling, or even renewals?
Mm-hmm. There's a couple things. So right now in the winter months, what they're actually, what the sales team is selling is typically ice control. So someone, they'll go out and visit a hospital and see that the sidewalks might be getting slippery or the parking lot is getting some ice buildup on it. So they have through CPQ, they have customer specific pricing for salt and ice melt, what the rate would be to apply it. They've got all the information they need on square footage, who the contacts are at the customer, who they need to ping and promote this to. So all of that stuff is at their fingertips, and it's much easier for them to kind of coordinate, all these micro campaigns, so to speak. Every time it snows, there's often a sales campaign to make sure that we're doing everything we can for safety reasons and revenue reasons in the wintertime. And in the summer, mostly, they're out in they're selling grounds maintenance contracts, which is, lawn maintenance in the summer and irrigation maintenance and then snow removal in the winter, plus landscaping projects. So the maintenance contracts are very detailed. They're, customers have oftentimes very, very specific needs of, make sure you don't spray for weeds behind unit number 7 because that's Jan's organic garden, right? And all of that stuff they can capture in a pretty quick way, and then include in their bids. And then that information, once those accounts are won, gets passed at the appropriate time on the mobile devices to the crews that are out in the field. So, and then landscaping stuff, like Robin had mentioned earlier, and I think you did too, Chris, there's a lot of stuff to remember. I mean, even just the simplest things used to be missed all the time. When we plant a tree, always include a water bag. Don't assume that the customer is going to remember to water that tree every day. Right? And, so little things like that, lead to healthier trees, lead to happier customers, lead to customers wanting to renew when we come up for the next renewal cycle. So most of our contracts are annual contracts. Some are 2 to 3 years long. Now with CPQ, when customer contracts come up for renewal, we can easily see, we call it job costing, but we can see what the customer profitability is for that account. Did we bid the mowing hours properly? Does it actually take 8 hours every time to mow that property, or does it take 18? And then if we know we're 3% too low or 5% too high, well, we've never been 5% too high, but sometimes we're too low on pricing. We can very easily just type 3% in the field and click another box when it comes to renewal, and it literally produces a quote with a 3% lift that the rep can send to the customer to get it approved. So renewals are much, much easier with what we built together.
That's cool. So what are some of the lessons learned from the process, from the engagement, that you want others who are starting this journey to know about?
Well, I think CPQ, configure price quote implementations, are notoriously difficult. There are multiple different technology options on the market. All of them are really difficult to implement. They're complicated because they're so powerful, right? So if you really have to make some decisions on what your policy is, which effectively become rules in a software product, and to come up with your policy, you really have to understand your business and how your processes should work. So I think the CPQ of an implementation of CPQ is not something to take lightly. You need to really focus on it, and if you do that and put the effort in the cycles and understand how you want your sales process and kind of post-sales execution process to operate in the future, you can embed those future processes into the software. And this is true for all complicated software. CPQ is just generally definitely one of those things that it's a sophisticated implementation. It's not a simple like CRM contact database, right? Or or a simple scheduling system. It's a pretty sophisticated thing that you're about to go through, and you gotta really put the effort into making sure that it's successful.
Mm-hmm.
Wade, I know we've had conversations even as we're going through the CPQ project, and we had things that maybe fell outside the initial scope, and that's fine, that's great, but they were always kind of looking to the future. And I know you like to look to the future of not only technology but your business. Share with us where do you see CPQ in your future plans, and where do you see it being plugged in?
Yeah. So right now, over the winter months, one of the projects is just a smaller step. The sales team and the landscaping team and the irrigation teams are all meeting weekly, and they're flushing out the most common projects that happen over and over again. And they're putting together all the details that should be going into those bids so that we can create bundles within CPQ. Think of it as like a template for writing a bid. Like you mentioned earlier, to make sure that you don't miss the landscaping stakes or the landscape fabric or the nails that go into the retaining wall, or all those detailed things that might be missed. So we're planning to create a whole bunch more content over the winter months so that we're ready come spring to hit the ground running and move much faster and put together more accurate bids that are, quite frankly, more profitable because they include those things. We end up doing those anyway, but because you forgot them, the landscape stakes, you forgot them. Now you've got to drive to the store. There's three guys in the truck driving to a store, pick them up. You didn't charge for the stakes in the first place. Now you got to go pay for the stakes, bring them back, put it, you know what I mean? So the whole thing gets slower, and you kind of look like a fool in front of the customer, and it looks, and your momentum slows down. So those are some things we're doing in the short term. In the long run, our vision is that properties, the accounts that we service, the properties themselves actually become smart. So we've already seen it in the irrigation space where the grass is effectively through sensor technology knows whether or not it needs to be watered. Real simple stuff, combined with some cloud connectivity. Has been raining for 4 days straight. Well, it doesn't really need to be irrigated today. Is it supposed to rain tomorrow? A whole bunch? Well, then don't run it today, even if it's been a few days. And we saw, that's just a simple example, but on top of that, you can layer in flow sensors. So we have about 30 accounts now that have our flow sensors embedded in their system, so that if they have a leak in their irrigation system, the flow sensor notices it. And we're planning to integrate those sensor type technologies into the platform as well, so that we can more easily configure and then schedule a crew and dispatch someone to go repair it in a more automated way. So that's not like sending an email to someone who then has to remember to check an inbox and then has to type it in. It'll just flow right into Salesforce for the scheduling, and then we'll use CPQ to figure out what we're supposed to do in that case. What are the rules for the prices? You know, what is the service level that was sold? All that kind of stuff will become more automated. So yeah, so we think the properties will become much smarter. Yeah, and it starts with water, but it'll extend into, you know, fertilizer could be next. I know in the agriculture world, they know if their soil has enough nitrates in it, and if not, it orders fertilizer. So we'll see that too. We're playing around with snow sensors right now. You know, did we get 1.5 inches at that property of snow? Because when they get 1.5 inches, that's when they want us to come plow. So we're looking at that right now as well. So there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff that's coming that will lead to much more efficient use of technology, you know, equipment and fuel and chemicals and cost. You know, costs will come down for customers and service level will go up. So I think there's some pretty exciting stuff coming, and
Yeah, that's
CPQ
exciting.
is a really big piece of that. Yeah.
Well, great. Wade, this is Jim again. Thanks to Wade, Robin, and Chris. Really some great information and certainly some exciting things on the horizon for Clearscape. During his part of the presentation, Wade mentioned some of the insights that he learned from his project. Robin and Chris, since you've been involved in a lot of these projects over the years with a bunch of different applications, wondering if you have some key factors for success for CPQ projects.
Yeah,
Sure.
we do. I think Wade said it here, and I wrote his quote down. Start with something small to get started, and really what that means is start simple. I think a lot of times, and really what I'm going to say is start simple and discovery is critical. Those two go together. Wade had also mentioned about making policy decisions, doing your time up front to make sure that the CPQ implementations is going to work. Having a lot of CPQ implementation is done with the business analyst work up front. Making those policy decisions, making sure that the discovery is done. When do you want to bundle? When does it make sense not to bundle? Do you really need all the pricing rules and product rules? And then going back to starting simple, a lot of times, as Andy had mentioned earlier, you're running off spreadsheets, right? So your goal, probably with the first implementation of CPQ, is let's get you out of the spreadsheets and let's at least get you into a quoting process in CPQ and in Salesforce. And that's probably that's going to be a big step. So to go beyond that, I think that's where we start to get too complicated. So what we try to do is tell you, let's just start simple and let's get the users accustomed to using it. And then we'll add some complexity as we get going. So I think starting simple and doing that discovery up front is critical.
Absolutely, Chris. And I just wanted to speak to the bundle components piece. It's a really big kind of visible portion of CPQ is that you can bundle products together, whether they are components of a main product or if they are related products that go with a product. So, and I've done a couple of these implementations for different industry verticals. So, you know, you might have a computer package that has a CPU, monitor, mouse, keyboard. Wade also gave a great example of, for a landscaping project, just having those component parts like those stakes as part of the bundle. So when the sales rep is quoting to a customer, they pick the landscaping project bundle and they won't have to worry about forgetting that landscape fabric or those landscape stakes because they automatically appear in the product list for that project. So it really is it's a time to market faster for your quote, and it increases your accuracy overall.
Yeah, great. I also think that when you do a CPQ implementation, it's an awesome time to really evaluate not only your product offering and your price books, because some of you, and there's nothing wrong with this, but you have that spreadsheet that's in Larry's drawer that has all the pricing, and that sometimes gets updated and not everyone gets the right version. And you may not need all the products, you may not need all the pricing. So when you're doing CPQ implementation, it's a great time to look not only at your sales process, because CPQ is part of an opportunity, and opportunity is your sales process. Is there a way we can improve your sales process along with your product offering to make this all simpler for the sales reps?
Right. I also wanted to speak a little bit about the flexibility in securing your quote process. So depending on how you want to configure it, you can lock down the quoting process where folks pick a bundle and that's it. They don't get to adjust quantities or pricing, or you can allow editing within individual quote lines or within the entire quote. So
Yeah.
that is a really cool functionality.
Yeah. Just a couple left here. I want to make sure we have some time for the Q&A, so I'll quickly just mention that it's sometimes overlooked, but the change management that your reps are going to go through, going from a spreadsheet, now you're in a central location in Salesforce with CPQ, that's a big change. And I think a lot of times clients overlook that and they don't address it. And so when we do these, I say you really need to have a plan, and not only do you have to have a plan, but you need to start to communicate it day one. And in addition to that, in concert with that, is what is your training plan? Because it is going to be a big change. So having those plans in place is crucial.
Okay. And just one final thing here before we get to Q&A. As Wade mentioned, having CPQ set up actually helps to expedite contract renewals and upsell opportunities, including if you have a product that you're no longer going to be including in a bundle, that product can be swapped out automatically in your contract renewal. So there's a lot of expedited functionality to leverage here with CPQ.
Great. Thanks, Robin and Chris, for those insights. With that, let's move into our Q&A session. Andy will be rejoining the team now. And remember, if you do have a question, please submit it via the questions pane on the right of your screen. So the first one is, do I have to have an ERP to take full advantage of CPQ in my business? Maybe Andy, want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I can totally take that one. Can you hear me okay, Jim?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I can totally take that one. So the question of, do I need an ERP in order to take full advantage of CPQ? The answer is no, absolutely not. A lot of our customers, especially in the manufacturing segment, do have an ERP. There are other customers in other segments who may have other platforms they have in play that have product masters, pricing masters, customer account masters. You do not need one of those to work with the system. CPQ and Salesforce can stand alone and just work off of the data that's in Salesforce. For our customers that do have those upstream and downstream systems and processes, we will work with you to make sure that the data is harmonized, and I say that with a big cheesy grin on my face, harmonized across your environment to lessen any stressors of moving data back and forth, and ultimately speeding your time to quote and then speeding your time from an order to fulfillment.
Great. The next question is probably best for Wade, and I know you touched on this a little bit, but can you talk a little bit more about learning curve, adoption, and any hiccups you might have had rolling this out to your sales reps?
I think it's when you move into software from very little software, I think the adoption, I think it was all pretty understandable for with very, very little training for a salesperson to figure out how to use it. But they do need to be trained. You do need to spend time. with them to make sure that they understand it. So I think that, if you're going to gather a whole bunch of additional information, it might feel at first like the time to put together a bid takes a little bit longer. But now you've got that information loaded, and that was the only time you had to do it. So I think there was a little bit of some pushback in the beginning on how many times do I need to click and how many things do I really have to enter. I just want to get a bid out. Oh, now I have all that in there, and the next time I wrote a bid for that customer, because 90% of our stuff is the same, it's inside sales. Now that information is there, the next bid was way faster, right? So I think there is a bit of a learning curve from just an understanding of what you're really getting out of it for some reps, and I think there could be some concern of like lack of control over it, and but once they realize that they can still edit anything they want to, that wasn't a real big issue. We haven't rolled out strict rules yet on approvals for price changes, that sort of thing. That will come later, but because I really wanted people to make it to feel like this was built for them, right? Because it is, and it makes them more efficient, right?
Great. Yeah. So it sounds like after they maybe overcome initial hurdle, they see the power of it and the value. So it's pretty easy from that point forward. Another question, can I execute and track subscriptions with CPQ?
Probably it's more for Robin, and then if
So
business is 90% subscriptions, so yeah.
So you can execute and track subscriptions with CPQ. Real basic terms, CPQ really has two product components to it. There's assets, which are kind of your one-time purchases. If you want to think about it, that would be the computer. And then you have subscriptions, which would be your yearly or whatever quarterly, yearly subscriptions. That would be your software to that computer. And so when you have CPQ, you're able then to not only go ahead and have assets, but then also have the subscriptions be created based on that CPQ quote. And then that gets into what Wade was talking about, is then when you go to do a renewal, you're really created a new contract, and it takes those subscriptions and creates your new renewal contract. And if you want to do an uplift, you sure can do that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chris, actually, so you hit on one specific thing, on one kind of theme in there, the concept of assets and the content of, or the context of subscriptions is actually either or, right? We have some businesses that are 100% asset. We have some businesses that are 100% subscriptions. And like Wade's business is a mix of the two, right?
Absolutely correct. Yep.
Great. What are the main ways I can apply discounts to my quotes? Robin, you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. Discounting on quotes is really flexible. You can discount on the line item itself and allow your sales reps to adjust pricing manually. You can apply a quote to the entire apply a discount to the entire quote. And then also you can have, as Wade mentioned, some customer specific pricing, where if you have contracted with a customer for a certain amount per year or for certain pricing on products, you can set that up so that that customer will always be priced at that level. In addition, there are pricing dimensions that can be set up, and other discount percentages that you can add in programmatically.
Great. When you've not chosen CPQ for one of your customers, what did you do instead? Maybe it wasn't a perfect fit.
Sure. I can speak to this. I've done a lot of just regular sales implementations without CPQ. In that case, you miss out on that functionality of the bundling of the product rules. So if you pick product A, then product B needs to be selected. So it is possible to set up. It's just a much stronger, robust experience with CPQ, in that you have your product selection criteria, you have your rules, and your bundling.
Yeah, I would say I was going to
Oh,
say,
go ahead, Chris. Yep.
yeah, if you don't use CPQ, then you're really kind of using, if we stick, we like to stay in the box as much as we can and just use out of, standard products within Salesforce. You're looking at your quote object, which is nothing wrong with that, but really what you're limited to is the price book that you have, the price book entries in any of the products. If you want to have any type of automation or rules or anything like that, then you really are looking at CPQ.
Yeah, I was going to make a tongue-in-cheek comment about that. Is Robin, you had mentioned there's a robust user experience. Say that, before CPQ was a thing, right? Before SteelBrick came out and Salesforce, pulled it into the portfolio and offered as part of the core platform, before CPQ was really CPQ, and you didn't want to go to something like Oracle or something like FPX or something, right? We would also make a CPQ style solution back in the day, but where we shift the robust user experience, we shifted to robust administration maintenance.
Correct.
Right. So it's always a balance between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I can check in time here. I probably have time for this question, possibly one more. And Wade did touch on this, but it opened it up to the demand chain team too. How did you handle change management and training? And maybe for the demand chain team, have you worked with clients who've done a particularly effective job with that, aside from Wade, of course?
Well, our typical model for implementations is a train the trainer model. So we work with power users or key stakeholders to train them, and then they in turn train using documentation that we've created, sometimes together, sometimes it's created by us, to train their staff. And then obviously we are available for any questions or issues that come up during testing and during implementation.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a distinction here too. We've had clients where they say, oh no, we have change management. We are having marketing send out an email once a week for 3 weeks before we go live. And to me, that's more of a communication and not so much a change management plan. Change management, when we talk about that, what we're saying is you need to come with the sales rep's view. You take it from the lens of the sales rep. How is their world going to change, and what can we do today to start to introduce them? And it could be as simple as, hey, we've got some stuff in a sandbox. We want to start demoing this to you. We want to start to show you what this is going to do. So when you click this button, this is what's going to happen, and start to maybe get their feedback early up. Say, well, it would be really cool if we push that button and this happened. Oh, we can do that, but now you're getting their buy-in. That's what I think we mean by change management.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. Thanks again for your participation. And to wrap up, I'd just like to thank Wade, Robin, Chris, and Andy for a great session. Thanks to everyone for attending the session. Have a great day.